Episode 201. We have turned the corner onto the next century mark. What's going on, guys? I'm John Bauer, 5-man Twitter at the Bauer Club. I'm super excited for tonight's episode. I was singing, I was rocking out before we went live tonight. I'm ready, guys. I'm ready. Dan, what's up, buddy?
Great to see you, gents. Excited to be here. It was an awesome weekend just between the NFL draft. I really enjoyed the NFL draft. Got to sneak into a little bit of the draft party, but it was the same weekend as my Purple Stride. We all have our charities that we support. We had our big walk run, raised $111,000 and counting right now for pancreatic cancer. So
that's awesome.
Special kudos and thanks. Some of our members in our fantasy community and the Discord donated. Place in my heart. Thank you. And carrying that momentum into tonight's show, boys. Let's talk some football.
Nah, seriously, that's awesome, Dan. Congrats on that. We're also joined by Mitch Sorensen. I'm sure he has no even mediocre accomplishments to tout tonight. But what's going on, Mitch?
No, I showed up for the show. I think that should count for something, right?
That's a big win. Well, let's get right into it. So the last episode we had, it was 2 weeks ago now, right? Week and a half ago. And we did our pre-NFL draft mock, rookie mock. And Dan, you were so kind enough to take the notes from that episode and share it. And I want to recap, and we'll go through this as we go through our picks. We're looking at this as a 12-team super flex, 2 PPR for tight ends, okay? So, and this is a question that actually came up in the Discord today. Once you start getting away from the start one with 2 PPR, up or down, either way, there are going to be adjustments that are going to be made. But for the point of this conversation, a lot of the leagues that we're in, they're tight end premium, a lot of them being 2 PPR. That's the lens we're going to look through tonight. So to recap, prior to the NFL draft, and we're going to do the same order, it went Dan, myself, and Mitch. So let's just go through the first round first, okay?
Well, we could skip over mine if you don't.
No. So Dan, you started us with Bijan Robinson. I went Anthony Richardson, Mitch Bryce Young. 104 was CJ Stroud, Jahmyr Gibbs at 105, JSN at 106, Addison, Charbonnet, Will Levis, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Zay Flowers. So that was the 12 that we started off the pre-draft mock with. And it's going to be interesting to see how much we fluctuate. I don't know about you guys, but the amount of time I've spent in the sheets, all right, in the spreadsheets, keeping it PG over here, since Thursday night, it's just been nonstop. So I actually talked about this today with all of our patrons, and I said the first wave of rookie drafts, because we all have taken part in rookie drafts up to this point already, and the first wave, you kind of have your pre-draft evaluation, your pre-draft rankings, and then you get into it once you get the draft capital and landing spots, and you either overcompensate one way or the other. You don't adjust enough, maybe, and then you kind of start to find that middle ground. So I can't tell you how many times I've tinkered with things, and it really shows you when you're in a rookie draft how you feel about these players. I can go in these spreadsheets and we can put our rankings together, and it doesn't mean anything unless you're taking part in these rookie drafts, right? So I'm getting to a point that I'm looking at 2 players and I'm like, okay, I'm going with choice A, no doubt about it. But why do I have them in the same tier? So you adjust a little bit. Anyway, I just wanted to give a little background. I've been thinking a lot about different things. You guys are like, shut up, JB. Let's just get into the mock. I know. All right. Anything else before we get started?
I think it was good context there, JB. You know, and I think as we go into tonight's mock, I reflect back a little bit, obviously, from our pre-draft. I also reflect a little bit back to a year ago. I think when we did this show 2 weeks ago, I said both you guys were more locked in than a year ago. I think last year pre-draft, JB was drinking some Kool-Aid or something. And then post-draft, you could tell JB was into the spreadsheets last year as he's alluding to that he is hardcore going into this year. And, I look back to last week. It was pretty good, other than,
This is the challenge flag.
is that your chat? What's the challenge? What
I
last
was
week's
like,
challenge?
No,
That's
no,
not bad.
no.
You should wear that red shirt more often.
I like it. First of all, I take exception to the fact that you're saying, pre-draft last year, JB and Mitch weren't tuned in. I went in with the expectation that it was a lot of the quarterbacks. And we can go through the second round if you'd like from last year to remind the listeners. I was spot on, baby.
I mean, I didn't mean like, I was given credit to being locked in. Some things, some value slid to me last year, but
Always
drinking
locked
Kool-Aid,
in.
JB, I was more alluding to you with that Malik Willis pre-draft last year. Like it was, again, you just probably weren't in the spreadsheets yet. That's all.
I'm always in there. Don't question my time in the sheets. Anyway, let's
Well,
get
real quick. Hold on. Wait. Before Dan makes his selection, I have a very important question for him. Have you made a single first round pick yet in all of your dynasty leagues?
I traded into a first round, but I did not have a first round pick.
But you've made a pick.
Now, all the leagues that we're picking in this week are obviously leagues that we're all in together. Most people in Dynasty are, self-created, recruited friend leagues. And then I think in 10 days or so, the safe leagues kind of start up. So we get our next wave of drafts. I'm just not sure if I have first in them either, Mitch, but no, I had to trade in to get a high pick. But don't worry. My studying and my spreadsheets are still locked into the value of these top picks.
All right. Mitch, that's a great question. I was thinking that myself.
It was important.
It was important. All right, Dan, start us off. Is there any change here with the 101? You went Bijan pre-draft. Where are you sitting today on May 2nd?
Yep. It could be very tempting to switch. The NFL draft had 3 quarterbacks go in the top 4 picks, which is very enticing. But gentlemen, I like my rosters to compete. And as much as I, love Bryce Young, Carolina, they might be a little competitive. Stroud, it's going to be a little bit for the Texans. Anthony Richardson, I just don't know about him yet. So Bijan is safe. I'm going to stay on brand from last year where I stood with Breece Hall. I'm going to stay with Bijan here in the post-draft pick 101.
I don't know if there's much to say about that.
And I love Bijan with Atlanta too.
A little bit. The one thing that I got out of that is Dan's 102 is not Anthony Richardson, which is a little spicy.
It sounds like he's going to get one of his either his 2 or his 3 with the 104 tonight. I also am not going to change at all from my pre-draft pick. At the 102, Anthony Richardson going in, I was hoping he was going to get the top 5 draft capital. Was he going to get top 10? Was he going to slip it all? A la Malik Willis, obviously completely different situations. And I felt much safer about Richardson leading up to the draft. But not only do we get top 5 draft capital, we get a landing spot with an offensive guru in Shane Steichen. All right. He's going, and I know that hurts you, Dan, because he's coming from the Eagles, but you also get Anthony Richardson in a spot that he is going to start right away. Mm-hmm. And I talked about this during our quarterback episode when I said, I want to see Anthony Richardson get the opportunity to perform immediately. I didn't think it was going to help him to sit. Would it help him to sit behind Gardner Minshew for a few games? Throw him out there. You have a very talented running back in Jonathan Taylor. You have Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Jelani Woods. That's your guy, Dan. You saw him in person. You loved him. And now you add in these other rookies, Evan Hall, who was actually my favorite pre-draft receiving back in the late round. Hold on. Will Mallory at tight end, one of my favorite dart throw tight ends at the end. And Josh Downs, who slipped from a top 40 expectation for me down to the 3rd round. And unfortunately for all of those weapons, and Mitch, we talked about this, they go to a team now with a rookie quarterback that can't throw, but I don't care if Anthony Richardson's going to throw or not. He is going to be explosive. He is going to give you that floor you want when he plays. He's going to give you the extremely high ceiling. And pre-draft, I said, I have all 3 quarterbacks in the same tier. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. When these drafts rolled along, and I'm looking at these teams, and I'm looking at these rookie drafts, and the 102 was on the clock, I found myself trying to trade up for those picks. Not once have I tried to trade up for 103 or 104. So for me, Anthony Richardson, not only is he my quarterback one, he takes a step above the other two, and he's not even in the same tier as those guys right now.
JB, when you make that pick, is that based on, hey, we know the ceiling of an Anthony Richardson. If he busts, he busts. I don't care. It makes sense to take him there. I got the draft capital I needed with Indianapolis, taking him at 4, so I know the buy-in is there. I know the opportunity is going to be there. You're okay with the risk of him not really putting together any real good football in college?
No, because even from, the way that we evaluate and we value these rushing quarterbacks, Justin Fields is the perfect example. Still a top 10 dynasty quarterback on the brink of, is he going to be replaced? Are they going to take a quarterback? Obviously they traded out, but there was always that thought because of how poorly the Chicago Bears have performed as a team that was a possibility. And now it's already being talked about with Kyler Murray next year because of the 2 picks that Arizona has, most likely going to be somewhat early. So we'll see how that plays out. But with Anthony Richardson, maybe he doesn't get through the rookie contract. Maybe he fizzles out. But that's going to be 4 exciting, high-value years from a production standpoint. And if you've seen enough, if you're looking to get off that ride, there's going to be opportunities to move off of him if you so choose.
Yeah, that's fair. As much as I do like busting your chops and throwing the challenge flag, that was more really a question for our listeners because they are going to be faced with this decision in their draft of Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson. And I wouldn't say negative to either one of those picks. I feel Bryce Young may feel safer, but boy, the potential of Anthony Richardson. And there are enough of those dots we could connect that show positives in his favor, as you mentioned, offensive coordinator, talent around him, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, if he would have slipped in the draft a little bit, even around a 10, 12, I'd be reevaluating things because then there's teams that need a quarterback that passed on him. We'll bring up Will Levis later, who obviously slipped to the early second, but Anthony Richardson, just the athletic profile and the excitement with the coaching staff. I think this is a team, and it's easy to draw the comparison. Look what Shane Steichen did as an OC with Jalen Hurts. So it's easy to draw the comparison. Can Anthony Richardson improved and essentially be the AFC equivalent of Jalen Hurts from an improvement perspective? We'll see, but I think the production's going to be there, and he is my 102, and it does not matter if my quarterback situation is a little fuzzy. It doesn't matter if I have 2 studs on my team already. He's my 102 locked and loaded.
That is
Mitch.
fair. That's fair.
I think it's all fair. That's
103. 103?
As the Lions fan, I'm going to have to go just kidding. I can't. I want to, right? But like John said, it doesn't matter. I don't care if I have Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes as my quarterback. My 103 in every league is Bryce Young. Bryce Young is still the best passer in this draft. He's the best at reading the defenses in this draft. He's the best at everything besides being tall. Like everything else, he's really good at. He's going to such a great situation. They already have an offensive line built. They have Miles Sanders. They have veteran wide receivers. They're getting who else went there? Mingo as well. And so, what they're doing to help him out, I think and the division is horrible. So that helps out even more because there's going to be probably a 7 and 10 team make the playoffs out of that division because they're so bad. If not, maybe they're 8-9, but it's going to be pretty darn close. For me, there is a huge difference between Bryce and Stroud because like Dan said, I think Bryce is safe. He is Jared Goff, right? He's just that guy to where I feel in 5 years, I know exactly where he'll be, and I'm okay with that. And at the 103, I'm happier doing that than taking a gamble on a little higher ceiling with Stroud. Then, I'd rather keep that safe floor with Young.
Dan, I think you're on board with that pick over Stroud, obviously. Mitch, let me ask you, I have a follow-up here for you. If you're sitting at 103,
Mhm.
and you and I are in a situation where we have several startups trickling in over the next week and a half. We have at least 103 that comes to mind. We actually were in negotiations to move it earlier today. What would you be willing to add to the 103 to get up into the 102? Because I think you're there with me with Richardson being the quarterback one at this point.
Yeah, if I have a late first, I'll do it.
A late first. Okay.
I'm willing. So, like, not to throw out a name to ruin the mock, but let's say I have Zay Flowers. That's kind of like what my tier is in the late first, right? You're telling me it's going to cost me Zay Flowers on top of Bryce Young to go to Anthony Richardson to get that ceiling. That's worth it for me. I mean, it's a high price to pay, but the ceiling is just so much higher. It's not like with the two quarterbacks, it's not the same stratosphere on what they could actually do on the field. If both of them start week one, do you know how the odds are going to be in Anthony Richardson's favor so hard for the offensive rookie of the year compared to anything Bryce Young's going to be able to do? Because it's just so hard for Bryce Young to put up what Anthony Richardson is going to do. And he could be terrible on the field, but he's still going to have a good chance to do it.
Can I ask you, does that answer change if you earn the 103 and traded for the 112, or vice versa?
No, I want Anthony Richardson. There's two guys that I like this draft, right? But if I could walk away from this draft with Bijan, Richardson, or Gibbs, I'm extremely happy. Like, I love those guys coming out of this draft. So if I have to give up more equity to get up to them, then I'm more than happy to.
Even if you're not necessarily in a position to rebuild.
Because I think he's that good. And if I'm that bad anyways, as long as I'm not giving up my 24th first next year so I can grab my other quarterback, I'm good with it.
All right. Dan, do you want to take us to the 104? Here, actually, really quick. Wes jumped in here with a question. I know we don't really play in a ton of one quarterback leagues, but Wes says, where does everyone think Richardson goes in one quarterback leagues after the first maybe 5 to 6 picks? There seems to be a big cluster of roughly the same talents.
I would love to answer, but I haven't played in a one quarterback league in probably 5 years now.
I was going to ask what a one quarterback league is.
Yeah.
Kidding, Wes.
If there is no tight end premium, this answer is a little bit easier for me, because then you're going Bijan, Gibbs, JSN, Jordan Addison, and I think you really could. It sounds crazy, but you could make a case that Anthony Richardson goes around 5.
And that's pretty high for one quarterback for a quarterback.
It is.
Right? Okay.
It is. But you see a lot of the folks in the Discord, and they're dropping trade offers they receive, and they're dropping different scenarios in the chat. And the high value quarterbacks, especially the ones with rushing upside, because they give you that tremendous ceiling, it's still a pretty penny to acquire. Obviously nothing close to super flex values, but 105, if you're not sold on the remaining wide receivers, if you're not sold on the tight ends, especially if it's not tight end premium, I could see a case. I could see a case for that. But again, that's just it's a great question. And I would love for, other people, if you play in more one quarterback leagues, how far does that stray from what you would expect? I would love the insight there and the other folks' thoughts. All right, Dan, 104.
All right, 104. We all stood consistent 1 through 3. We held our ground. I was hoping Mitch would go with his heart maybe and take Gibbs so Young would come to me. If this was a draft where I was in with Mitch, I probably would take Gibbs here just because I might be able to squeeze a little more out of Mitch later on, JB, knowing that he's a diehard Lions fan. And it is harder for me now post-draft than it was pre-draft, because boy, did Gibbs go early. And then Swift gets traded, and it's like, ooh, this is juicy. But David Montgomery is still there, and I kind of like him. I think Gibbs is going to be great and everything. And there's enough, I think, production to go around in that offense. But being that he's not quite the bell cow, I still love Superflex. I still am going to believe in CJ Stroud. I want the starting quarterback in a 2-quarterback league. And as much as the Texans always make me nervous with their dysfunction, I will stay with CJ Stroud at pick number 4.
Is there the possibility that CJ Stroud goes down the Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson path? A quarterback that goes top 5 that is inflated. Well, inflated is the wrong word. Has a value extremely high in these formats because, hey, he's a top 5 quarterback. I got to take him. That's what the book says, right?
I think with him, it's my worry is the landing spot. It is if Bryce Young went to Houston, I would have the same worry, to be honest. It's they have talent there, but it's all mediocre, right? There isn't one guy on that offense that I'm like, wow, that's really good. He could play with him. I mean, the offensive line.
Dalton Schultz.
Exactly, right? That's like the highlight of their team right now. Well, they have Damian Pierce. It's nothing to get excited about. And it's a rookie head coach who I think is going to be really good, but we don't know. And so for me, I think there's just so many things to worry about that he's easily my quarterback 3 in this class because of it.
I wouldn't argue with you, but in all seriousness, if you're in a 2 PPR league, throw feelers out for Dalton Schultz. I think he's going to have a big year. I really do. And it might be 80 catches, 600 yards.
It's a lot of catches for Dalton Schultz.
70 catches.
That's a lot of catches.
But the hyperbole there, the exaggeration, I could see the catch to yard ratio not being great, but that's why I'm specifying 2 PPR. I think Dalton Schultz has a fairly favorable price right now to acquire, but there is a time and a place for tight end talk. You see, I can't stop talking about the tight ends every episode.
Yeah, only if you draft one.
All right, we'll get there.
It's a good preview of Houston in that fantasy situation there. And we didn't mention John Mechie. I just, a little part of me just, maybe I'm rooting for him, but I think Mechie is going to be just a little bit better than anticipated and have a nice role in that offense. And, they drafted Tank Dell and there's still Nico, but it's a developing offense there. But I think they're headed in a better direction. And yeah, CJ Stroud could be everything you described, JB. That won't be good. But right now, I'm going to bet on the talent. Plus, he's an Ohio State quarterback, so that makes me nervous too, based on history. But I still feel confident enough to stick with it at 104.
All right,
and pass up whoever I miss here. I'll figure out if I lost one of these guys, I'll live with that right now.
We're staying chalk here at 105. I'm sticking with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think 105 from a perceived value perspective really jumped up in value from pre-draft to now. You get Jahmyr Gibbs, who, he lands in Detroit with top, 12, 13 draft capital. All right, well, now you got DeAndre Swift, you got David Montgomery, and you have Jahmyr Gibbs. How are they going to be able to work this 3-headed monster? Well, DeAndre Swift, he's moved, really opens things up for everybody involved. David Montgomery, I think he puts up top 24 numbers this year. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he's a little bit higher up. He is an explosive weapon that is going to be utilized, and the ceiling is extremely high, and barring injury, which we know is more than a possibility for any player, but certainly the running back position, I think 105. There was that conversation, Gibbs or Jackson Smith and Jigba at 105, 106. They're still tiered together for me. But if I have the choice at 105, I gotta go with Gibbs, because I believe he's going to give you that immediate production in an offense that's steadily been improving. And it was one of the highest scoring offenses in the league last year. And, you're bringing back Jameson Williams after the suspension. You have Jared Goff, who they're now discussing with possible contract extensions. You have a coaching staff building a culture, and I just think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be an explosive player that is a lot of fun to cheer for in that offense. So 105, give me Gibbs. And also, we talk about, the way Bijan Robinson is valued. Well, we get another top 12 running back in the NFL draft, and the average age of these running backs throughout the league, it's certainly getting higher. So you're seeing more and more separation between a Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, even though Jonathan Taylor, he's 24 now, so man, he's getting old. But I think there's just that growing gap between the different levels of running back. So I want that advantage of the position.
Yeah, I'll add to that, JB. I think if my roster was pretty set up pretty good at quarterback, I would have took Gibbs at 104. I could go either way. I think pre-draft you taking Gibbs at 5 looks even better now based on where his draft capital went. You're not getting cute here. You're right where you need to be at 105. And I think when we talk about running backs, you hear a lot of the post analysis throughout the industry. I think there's a difference between your traditional running back and a weapon. He's a guy that he's going to get the PPR. He could do a little bit of everything. And he went to Mitch's Lions. Bonus.
Mitch, question from Greg in the chat. How much are you willing to pay to go from 107 to 105?
It's going to cost at least an early second, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's what I would do. I couldn't give like the 112 for it, but if I have the 202 and I'm sitting there, I'll do it because I love Gibbs. Like, I love him. A big thing with the Football Outsiders ranked. So like the Eagles had a great run blocking offensive line, right? The Lions were right next to him. The problem was the running backs couldn't do anything with any of that because Jamal Williams, he was great in the red zone, but sucked outside of that. And DeAndre Swift just can't run through a hole to save his life. I mean, that's the biggest issue with him. And so for me, I mean, I think the Lions just saw what Gibbs could do in the same situations that they put the other running backs in. They're like, yep, that's what I want.
In 2 PPR for tight ends and Superflex, I have a tier break between 205 and 206. Tier breaks before that as well. So what I would be looking to do, obviously you need the pieces to make this work, but if I had like 107, 207, and another piece, or maybe a player swap, if you're looking to move up, I, for one, if I'm in the top 7, I'm okay staying put. Personally, I don't feel the need to add the extra draft capital, mainly because I believe Jordan Addison is going to be a very good fantasy producer.
At this point, we're not going to even get to draft Jordan Addison.
Well, listen, people have comments, people have questions. I'm not.
John needs to talk.
All right, I won't say a word. I won't say time to be.
You are a liar.
All right, 106. Who's that, Mitch?
I mean, it's JSN. I would love to go something different, but I just think the top 6 are so locked in. And this is even like, I'm being adamant about this because I don't love the landing spot. I know everybody's like, hey, he's going to eat middle of the field. Lockett's been pretty good there for a long time. They still have Lockett. They have Metcalf. I don't really think they're going to let Geno air it out. I don't know why. I just don't really see that in Pete's repertoire being like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to feed all 3 wide receivers this year. I just don't think it's going to happen. And so for me, this is like taking a step back. He's still my wide receiver 1. Don't love the landing spot. Love everything about the player, though, so I'm not willing to move him down like I would have in previous years. But, I mean, that 106, if someone wants to offer me something for the 106, I'm like, all right, I'll drop down. And I'll drop down to the 107 for relatively nothing because I'd much rather have the 107 in a 2 PPR league.
And here's the thing, too, looking at Tyler Lockett's contract, he's locked in through 2025, and dead cap hit of $14.1 million in 2024 if they move on after the 23 season. So he's still probably going to be there. I could see Lockett and JSN finishing relatively close together, but as like wide receiver 3 flex play type options in 2023, with DK Metcalf obviously being elevated, Noah Fant taking a hit. This is not good for Noah Fant. And I like Noah Fant a lot. But anyway, I don't want to talk too much. Dan, 107. Let's see who we're taking.
Before I get there, I will say, Mitch, I kind of do like the landing spot. And even though Pete Carroll may not air it out necessarily, I think it's one of those offenses based on efficiency. They're going to put up very good fantasy stats. I really like the direction that the Seattle Seahawks are going. It's a lot of firepower there. You got 2 stud running backs. You got Metcalf. You got Lockett. You got, Geno coming off a good year. And I love JSN in the slot. And I think they'll move Lockett and JSN around a lot. I know JSN wants to play on the outside as well and not just be a slot receiver. So I think Seattle's going to be pretty fun to watch. And hopefully Geno could continue to build on what he did last year. But besides that, it's my pick at 107. I will be the first one to throw the change or the wrinkle. I took Jordan Addison last draft. Nothing against where Jordan Addison landed. I still like him a ton. But, man, my number 1 tight end went to the dream landing spot. We're talking 2 points PPR. Mitch, I was worried you were going to snake me at 106 because that is where I would have taken him at 106, even ahead of JSN. I love Dalton Kincaid. I loved him going into the draft, and now he gets Josh Allen. And if you've watched any of Buffalo's games, man, he tries to get Knox involved, and every once in a while, Knox gets these little spikes, but then he drops a ball or does something not good because Knox is just he's an average player. He's decent. Dalton Kincaid in that offense can be special, gentlemen. And I think they'll use him in the slot and use him at tight end in all different ways. So lock and load, that's a steal for me right now at 107.
So Dan wasn't around for the pivot point, but John and I had this exact same, should we call it discussion? A discussion between
It certainly wasn't an argument.
No, never. Not us. No. But I think this is where the draft really starts to get fun. Is this where you're going to take the wide receiver that everyone liked before? Are you going to take the tight end based off the landing spot? So I completely agree, Dan, that he's my 107 locked in there. But I completely understand if someone wants to take Addison too.
And you're going to completely understand me here because I'm taking Jordan Addison. In that offense, the big argument and the big knock and the thing that you keep seeing is, well, Jordan Addison is not going to be a wide receiver one in that offense. Tell that to T. Higgins. Tell that to Devontae Smith. Tell that to Jalen Waddle at this point with Tyreek Hill. I don't care if he is going to be a team's wide receiver one. There is it's not an asterisk getting fantasy points because, he's listed as the wide receiver too. They all get the same points. Okay. So I don't care if he is with a legitimate stud. That actually could be very beneficial. And we see a lot of wide receivers that really thrive off of that. So as long as Kirk Cousins is there, I know we have TJ Hawkinson scooping up a 20% target share, but I do believe Jordan Addison is going to come in. He's going to be a producer. And I said this on the pivot point, Mitch. I believe he's going to be challenging players like Chris Olave from his rookie year in terms of point per game production, right around 12 to 13 points. Drake London was at 10 points per game last year, and he's been rising up people's values. Okay. So for me, Jordan Addison, 108. I don't know how to take him at 107. 108 locked in. I'm going to pass it over to Mitch for 109.
Real quick, I'm trying to learn from the wide receiver 2 thing. I was the worst for it for a long time. We argued about T. Higgins forever. And I'm like, no, I don't want T. Higgins. He's the wide receiver 2. So I'm one of the people who used to hate him, like the wide receiver 2s, because they're never going to be like the dominant wide receiver you're looking for. But Addison's great there. Same reason, I'm going to keep it chalk. Our first 9 picks are the exact order that I have them in my tiers. And I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston. I still think he has the highest ceiling of all the wide receivers in this class. And just knowing that he's paired with Justin Herbert, I don't need to worry about Keenan Allen. He's going to play 5 games this year. Mike Williams might play 7 games this year. That's just how it goes with these guys. I hope they're healthy. I hope they last 17 games. The odds are they're probably not, right? So with Johnston, I hope that they slowly, they don't give him like the full route tree to begin with. Let him just slowly do what he's good at, then add stuff to it. Like do DK Metcalf's first year. Just give him the easy stuff. Let him get acclimated. And then after that, I really do think that his ceiling is much higher than JSN's, like much, much, much higher. But it's to be seen if he can put it all together, because he is definitely the one that needs to work on his NFL game the most out of the top 3 guys.
And I think Quentin Johnston, he is going to have that value insulation, if you will, because of what you mentioned. You have Keenan Allen, who's obviously up there in age. You have Mike Williams. He's not getting any younger. And they both have had health concerns over their NFL careers. So you're always going to have that, but with Quentin Johnston. Yeah, he struggled this year, but what if this happened? So he's going to have that built-in excuse. Whereas, like I just mentioned with JSN, DK Metcalf isn't going anywhere. Tyler Lockett, you look at that contract, and as long as he's still productive, why not hang on to him at that price? TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson sitting there at Minnesota. What's Baltimore's offense going to look like with Todd Monken? Speaking about Zay Flowers, the Carolina Panthers, Jonathan Mingo, blah, blah, blah. I think Quentin Johnson is the one guy that is going to get that excuse if he doesn't perform.
Yeah, I think everyone should just temper expectations. I think I said it in our pre-draft show, and he slid to me in 201 in the pre-draft. So I'm a little surprised with Mitch's aggressiveness, but I like Mitch's theory there. Hey, he goes with Justin Herbert. I think you get the Herberts, the Burrows, the Josh Allens, they're ideal landing spots. There's a lot of passing productivity from great quarterbacks in the offense, but I think I hope for his sake, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen do stay healthy. They're going to help bring him along, not force him into action and see him struggle in the beginning, because I think there is going to be that learning curve. But I would hope that second half of the season, he makes a jump or takes a step, and you see the progress and have a lot of optimism going into next year, and you see his role continue to grow. But now that takes me 110. I've got my quarterback, running back, and tight end, having now taken Kincaid. I need a wide receiver. And based on the talent here, I'm going to stay that route, and I'll take Zay Flowers. Not maybe, some risk there, a little small receiver with Lamar, new offense this year. It seems like they're going to try to do some different things. I go with the bet on talent. I do love Zay Flowers as a receiver. Give me Zay even in Baltimore.
So 2 picks in a row, guys. You're letting me go to my earlier tier and scoop somebody up because you so foolishly passed on them. And I don't get it. He doesn't have the Dalton Kincaid athletic profile. He doesn't have the first round draft capital. He doesn't have Josh Allen. But Michael Mayer, again, I think I have
tight end 3.
He's my tight end 2. He's or tight end 1. Tight end 1.
We're talking about the Raiders tight end 3. Isn't he behind Hooper and OJ Howard?
Yeah, we'll see if he can fend those 2 monsters off. But we look at collegiate profile. We look at the system with the Raiders. We look at Jimmy Garoppolo and his usage of tight ends. I think Michael Mayer is going to flourish in this offense. And, I have Kincaid and Mayer in the same tier in 2 PPR. Now, hold on, don't wave your hand at me. Now, once we go down to 1.5 PPR, I'm going to take Kincaid over Mayer because I do think he does offer that higher ceiling. He's going to have the more explosive plays. I'm not doubting that, especially in a Josh Allen-led offense. But in 2 PPR, when I'm okay with those guys that are just going to accumulate, there was a comment in the Discord today talking about different comps, and Michael Mayer came up. And I said, if you look at collegiate production, athletic profile, where they went in the NFL draft, Martellus Bennett actually lines up extremely well with him. And if you give me that production, I could live with that.
It's a solid pick, but he's no Dalton Kincaid, pal.
Guys, I don't know what the stink is. I'm seeing Mayer slip to 203, 204 in 2 PPR drafts. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Now, the only thing with the Martellus Bennett comp, I'm looking at it. I'm hoping it does not take
I was gonna say, years. I don't know if that's a good thing.
5 years to produce, but he had a nice little stretch there, but I don't want to wait half a decade to see it. So come on, Mayer. Come on, baby. All right.
This couldn't have gone any better. I mean, I'm getting A-Chain at the 112. I thought John was going to steal him without a doubt. But we had a long discussion about him in the Discord today. Is everyone's worried because he's going into what's called like a crowded backfield, whatever you want to call it. Like, if you're worried about Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert stealing touches, then you shouldn't be touching this guy in the first round. You shouldn't be touching him in the second round. Because if a team is going to go out and spend draft capital on a running back and you're worried about those kind of backs holding him back, then you shouldn't be drafting him. But that's the thing, is I'm not worried about those guys. Those are the guys that get replaced on every single team they're on. And it's okay. They're good NFL players, but they're not going to bring the same thing that Devin A-Chain is today. Jeff Wilson might have done it 5 years ago. Raheem Mostert might have done it 8 years ago. They're past their prime, and it's Devin A-Chain's going to come in and he's going to get 12, 13, 14 touches, but he's getting those touches in that offense. And that offense is so explosive, and that coaching staff is so smart that I have absolutely zero worries about him only getting 12, 13 touches a game, because I really think that is going to just keep him right where we want him in dynasty running back values. He's not going to go in. He's not going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, right? He's not going to be running back 5, running back 6, running back 7. But he's going to say a constant running back 10, running back 12 in dynasty, and I kind of like it. That's probably a little bit high, just going off the top of my head. But, he's going to be at least in the teens. And there's not a lot of running backs in this class that I feel that confident about.
And that's why he's going in that 110 to 201 tier, and sometimes even a little bit later. I personally haven't really seen him go much higher. So if you're out on A-Chain, I get it. The size is a concern. $188, as Dan would say, a little. What do you say?
He's a little light in the pants. You know what I mean?
A little light in the pants. That's
light
right.
in the behind. Yeah. Light in the behind. I think that's
yeah. But I saw this in the chat today, and unfortunately, the job didn't allow me to kind of jump into it. JB, do you have comps on this guy? Like where do we think?
Yeah, so we have the greatest comp ever for him. Javid Best.
That's a good Gibbs comp.
And that encourages you to take him at 112?
A healthy Javid Best, yes.
He had a very nice
he was
2
awesome.
years.
He had turf toe issues and concussion issues, and
All right, so you've got one sample size that lasted 2 years.
Oh, no, there's a lot more. That's just my favorite one. John has a whole bunch.
What else we got, JB? JB, just make me feel something.
So, Dan, are you worried about like Mostert keeping him off the field or Jeff Wilson?
No, because they're going to get hurt at some point. So, like,
he probably is too, but
I think they're going to ride Mostert Wilson as far as they can until the wheels fall off. And I think we'll see a little combination of all of them this year. And I think Miami's going to get another running back again next year, because I don't think A-Chain's the answer. I just don't believe in it in his size. Now, hey,
so you're saying
was decent.
So you're saying A-Chain's going to be in one of the 80% of the backfields across the NFL that's a committee.
But like a 3-person committee instead of a 2-person committee. And I think there's a team that's going to be more pass happy with Tua. I think he'll have some splash games. He's an explosive guy if they get him in space, and that coach is pretty good at scheming him. So like, I think he'd help Mitch's fantasy roster along the way here. But I guess where I struggle is I'd rather there's a couple guys I like more that I think are going to be better for much longer. And not necessarily at the running back position. I have other people I like. I'm not a long-term A-Chain believer, and that's where I struggle with this. Even though, again, now I think it's more of a realistic conversation post-draft than pre-draft, because, okay, look, he's with Wilson and Mostert. That doesn't scare any of us really away. There is an opportunity. So hopefully he is the guy that could overcome the doubters like me. And again, I could easily be wrong, and I would hope Mitch is right here as I'm rooting for Mitch's team. I'm just saying I struggle with it.
Yeah, well, now I'm trying to dig through the sheets.
You're good.
Here.
We could skip over the comps. We're all right.
He's deep in the spreadsheets.
Well, no, so you hear about the Coach McDaniel wanted him, right? Like he was excited. He pushed for this kid. And I was looking at it from last year. I believe Jeff Wilson was at like 0.8 PPR points per touch. Mostert was like 0.85. It might have been flip-flopped. If you tell me the A-Chain's going to get 13 touches a game and you're pushing that 0.8, 0.9, if you would tell me that the running back I would take at 112, what are we at? What are we at now? 112? 112, 201 range. You would be happy with that. I understand the long-term durability concerns, but he showed to be durable in college.
In the SEC that everybody cares about so much, right? Everyone's like, oh, these guys that play in the SEC, they know what it's like to play NFL football, except for it's Devin A-Chain, then we don't really care about that so much.
I think there is a perfectly reasonable concern there. Absolutely. But also, it's not like we're sitting here saying take him at 101, 102, 103. Jeff says he saw him go 107 and 108. I mean, that's a little early for me, especially in 2 PPR for tight ends.
That's the thing. It depends on the tight ends for me. If the tight ends aren't there, if it's like a 1.5 premium, I could see him actually going up a little bit higher.
But here's the thing too. Let's say you earned that 112 and you like your team, just like we talk about with the NFL.
Yep.
This could be seen as a luxury pick.
Yeah, just like the Lions. The Lions
So-
took lots of lottery picks this year.
Yeah, the Lions are the only team I've ever heard of making luxury picks when they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's what we do. That's the Lions right there. It's gonna work. It's gonna be fine.
All right. Anyway, we've talked about A-Chain so much in the Discord. If you're interested in those conversations, check out the Dynasty Theory Patreon, $5 a month. Get in there, you'll love it. Dan, 201.
All right. It's getting a little bit interesting here. We've definitely mixed up our draft a little bit here in the later part of the second round. A-Chain's kind of moved up. I want to get ceiling. I want to try to get myself a guy that could be a starter, another guy that got excellent draft capital early second round. We talked about him last show. I told Mitch to have conviction. I even have more conviction now where Carolina took him in with the opportunity there. Give me Jonathan Mingo. I think I'm getting a potential number one wide receiver here. I thought it last show. Pre-draft, I took him at – sorry, I'm mixing my charts up here. Where did he slide last draft? Where did I miss it here? Mingo. Pre-draft.
No one took him last draft.
We didn't take him in the first two rounds.
We didn't
No,
take
I
him.
said I was going to.
Oh, you
with
were
the last
going
pick.
and you let him slide.
He
and
was
I
brought
just-
up.
Yep. So, okay. So he could end of second round is where we were looking pre-draft. He said, no, Mitch, take him. I'm taking him here. I'm going to have the conviction with him. Give me Jonathan Mingo. Great opportunity. Great talent. I saw him as a sleeper potential number one receiver. And then Carolina says, you know what? We agree with you. And we are taking him with the 8th pick of the second round. What an opportunity.
So what do I got, guys? 202?
You got 202?
And we're playing tight end premium 2 PPR, right? That hasn't changed.
Don't you dare. I'll fly to Pennsylvania if you do that.
I might change my name from John to Laporta John. Do you like that? I just came up with that.
At least you finally took the correct tight end this time.
Sam Laporta
Funny.
at 202. He checked every box for me. I know he's a little bit shorter, 6'3", a little bit shorter for a tight end, but he's going to be a producer in that offense. I took Jahmyr Gibbs. I talked about the way this offense has been building, and I expect that to continue. So Sam Laporta, second round draft capital, going to the Detroit Lions, a fantastic spot. I'm gonna
Mitch,
take
I would
him.
have been more impressed if JB, Mr. Tight End Conviction pre-show, took Laporta in that draft.
I get
but,
that. Yeah. That's
I would have been a little more impressed. And Mitch, just for the record, too, Dallas was interested in Laporta. They were hoping he would slide to him, and then Dallas went in a different direction with tight end. But he was high on Dallas's board.
And he's coming from tight end university.
Yes. Yeah.
What's not to love?
This sucks. Like, I don't want to, but here at the 203, I'm going to take Charbonnet. Like, I don't want him. I don't have him. I've done probably 20 rookie drafts so far, I think. I might have him on one team, and it's probably because the team was so bad. I was like, well, I could just draft him, have him sit if I need to. But, like, I know he's good. He's a second round running back. Everything tells us pre-draft, post-draft, if you look at everything outside of Kenneth Walker, he should go a lot higher than he is. But Kenneth Walker is there. And so we've already talked about that Seattle Seahawks offense, about how there are a lot of mouths to feed. And are they going to be the Lions from last year where they're putting up 30, 35 points a game? Maybe. I think it's kind of doubtful, but maybe he can produce. But I just have such a hard time. I think either him or Kenneth Walker will, but it's so hard for me to have any faith that it's going to be Charbonnet at this point in time.
But does he not, like, this is an offense that relied on Kenneth Walker, really had no other options at running back. And Charbonnet has shown that he can perform in the passing game. And I'm not saying Kenneth Walker won't get some receiving work as well. I think the addition of Zach Charbonnet limits the ceiling of Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. I think I'd be very surprised if somebody didn't see it that way. But you now have Zach Charbonnet coming in the second round draft capital. I know Kenneth Walker is only going into year 2, but like you said, we have the draft capital. We have the profile from a collegiate perspective. We really have never seen a situation like this where we had a running back get drafted in the second round, perform, catapult himself up to a top 5 dynasty back, and then have another second round running back come right in the very next year. We haven't seen that. So this is new territory for everybody. Yep. How do you evaluate it? And I think where we're looking at Zach Charbonnet, I have him that 202 to 205 tier. Him and A-Chain flip for me in terms of running back 3 and 4. I had Charbonnet at 3. That switched. But Dan, you can make all the faces you want. That's fine, because I feed off of your hate. I feed.
You do. That's true. That's true.
I feed off of it. But now Zach Charbonnet comes in with the profile, with the pedigree, and he offers you the possibly one of the premier backups, if you will, if Kenneth Walker were to miss time. So instantly you can capitalize if you so choose. And that's even to say they don't work towards a 50-50 split. So we see a David Montgomery, and we see a Jamal Williams and a DeAndre Swift perform last year. Seattle very well could be a Detroit light. I'm not saying they're going to have the Hall of Fame caliber offense that we saw from the Lions last year, but I do think we could see similarities there, and there's just too much upside with Zach Charbonnet, in my opinion, and very little downside, because if he doesn't play all that much, well, there's an excuse for him, right? We knew Kenneth Walker was going to be there. It's going to be okay. And again, same thing as Anthony Richardson when I brought up, you're going to be able to cash out on Zach Charbonnet at some point in time, whether it's an injury, whether it's a 50-50 split, whether he just starts to outperform Kenneth Walker. But I've talked about this how many times. Go back to your league page from last year. Go look at the caliber of running backs that were moving for a second round pick. Straight trash. And you're telling me Zach Charbonnet isn't an upgrade? So the caliber of players that get moved in season, Zach Charbonnet, I think he's a very good pick here in this range.
For how much you're talking about him, you probably should have picked him over Laporta. I'm just saying.
I have done that. I have Laporta just above. Just above.
It's tight end John, man. John loves tight ends. Remember last show, Mitch?
Laporta John.
He's in. He's got Laporta John. That's going to be in the future Dynasty Theory t-shirt there, potentially.
We can make that. We can make that. All right. What are we doing here? Is this 204?
204, man.
Yep.
I am on the clock. I appreciated John's Charbonnet pick. And, I think
going back to my show.
I know it wasn't his, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. It was Mitch's. He stole it off.
You're good. No worries. No worries.
Holy cow. Yeah, but Mitch, I like your pick. Just like Mingo last show, have conviction in it, man. We all loved him pre-draft. Draft landing spot, like 52nd overall in the draft. Seattle's invested in him. It's a 2 running back league. I think there'll be enough production there to make him relevant. And the guys get hurt too, man. Kenneth Walker get banged up, and you get some really good weeks out of Charbonnet. I just really like that Seattle offense. But my pick here at 204, I'm going to get a little risque here. I'm going to be a little different. Another guy that we did not draft last episode. I've been really falling in love with the film after seeing where his draft capital was.
You're going Rashid Rice, aren't you?
Opportunity's really good. I am not going Rashid Rice. You would think I would, but I am going Jaden Reed, man. Green Bay Packers. Guys, did you see his film? So he gets picked 50th overall in the draft. He's going to fit beautifully in the slot. Romeo Dubs, who I don't even know who. This guy is catching big-time balls in big-time games against big-time corners. He's catching back shoulder balls. He's doing this all kinds of route trees. Everything I've read about him since he went there just tells me this guy is got sneaky fantasy value. He was the other guy I traded up to, and I think in our Discord league today. I love Jaden Reed. And I love him just from the perspective of like this point in the draft. All these guys are kind of the same. I think he's a guy you could get invaluable in your dynasty leagues. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this rich at 204. He might slide a few picks later. Give me Jaden Reed all day. I think he's going to be a good NFL wide receiver. I wish I knew more about him pre-draft than I did. Loved his landing spot.
Mitch, any thoughts here? Or should we just keep it rolling?
He's going mostly in the 4th round is what I've seen. I guess the
Fourth.
mid to late third in a lot of my leagues. Just, I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I'm just saying that's usually where I've been seeing him going lately.
You can get him a little bit later.
They're bargains. I've been seeing some mid second rounds. You guys are in some extra leagues than I am, so that's understandable. So hey, if he is going that late, grab him. Everyone in the
Even
chat
better.
that listens to this, grab him.
Yep.
All right, so at 205, and really quick, I see Jeff's comment. If Charbonnet went to Cincinnati or Dallas, he would be the 107, and some say landing spot doesn't matter. Again, it's an unprecedented situation, though.
Landing spot matters.
It's an unprecedented situation, so we can sit here and say, yeah, there are exceptions, certainly. And when you're a back that goes to another team with a top 5 dynasty running back, what the hell do you think is going to happen? That's not rhetorical.
Oh, sorry. I thought that sounded pretty rhetorical to me. What do we think is going to happen? Exactly what we talked about 5 minutes
Jeff
ago.
always knows how to get me fired up. This is what our patrons do. They know how to get. Hold on, let me look at my watch here.
Usually blame us, and now it's the patron's fault.
It's,
That's pretty good.
It's never my fault. I can tell you that. Hold on, let's see my heart rate. What did it just go up to? Because I have a feeling it did. Oh no, it's okay. It's still decent for me, which is shocking. Okay, love you, Jeff. At 205, I might be lighting this pick on fire. I have been all over the map on this guy, and I'm gonna go. Even though he slipped to the second round of the NFL draft, and I hate it. Give me Will Levis. I think there is upside there at 205. There is upside. Again, I very well could be letting this pick on fire. I don't like Will Levis as a prospect. He was my quarterback 5 if Hendon Hooker would have been drafted towards the end of the first. Even with Levis, if he would have gone in the first, I preferred Hooker, but slipping to the third round in the NFL draft for Hendon Hooker, you have to adjust. All right. And I've still seen him go quite early in several leagues. So a lot of people didn't adjust. But Will Levis, typically he's going earlier than this. So it's pushing other players down. But if you take him at 205, again, we see the type of running backs that we're getting second round draft capital. It's the same thing with quarterbacks. You're going to be able to cash out on him. You are. Yes, you are. I'm telling you.
Mitch just seems anti-Levis. I like the pick, and knowing how you guys are, had a little shock value with Jaden Reed, I should have slid maybe to my next pick with Reed and taken Levis, because I do believe the Titans are going to do everything they can to get off Tannehill. I think they tried so hard with Malik Willis last year. We saw them give him, I know there was an injury and whatnot, but I really think they wanted Malik Willis to succeed, and he just couldn't do it. I could see Tannehill getting hurt or fizzling out and it being Will Levis time.
But again, go down the board, though. There's nobody that I'm looking at and saying, this is a surefire player at this point. So just give me the upside.
Yeah. And then when he gets that start, JB moves him and gets a future first for him.
You're not getting a future first for him. I just don't believe it. He's going into a talentless situation. You take Derrick Henry off that team next year. He's not going to be on the team next year. That team is talentless. They have Treylon Burks. I mean, and that's like the highlight of that team. Their offensive line is terrible. Like, that is not a situation someone's going to be like, you know what? I want to buy into it. There's a lot of quarterbacks. I would say there's probably 6 to 7 starting quarterbacks in the league right now that you won't be able to get a late first for.
But they got Peter Skoronski in the first round. They're making steps in that O-line.
Sure
he will help Derrick Henry this year.
Yeah.
There's some help coming.
Nope.
They do need more weapons.
Nope.
But
you're saying you're not going to be able to get a future first.
Nope.
How many leagues have we already seen him go in the first of this year's draft?
We saw that with Malik Willis last year, John. You've been talking about that for the last 6 months.
And it was asinine.
I agree.
And that's why I'm going with him at 205.
But that's why I'm saying you won't be getting a first for him later either.
Then I burn 205, and I can sleep well at night with my CPAP on.
Okay.
I'm with JB here. I mean, I'm getting a little worked up too, Mitch. You got to admit, week eight, when Tannehill, whatever happens, because of all the lack of weapons or an injury, Will Levis gets the start. You tell me there's not going to be a quarterback needy team that won't give a first to JB, who at that point in time, all the hype will come. Will Levis is
looking
ready
at that
to
offense,
go.
being like, Tannehill is not going to be winning me any games.
All right, let's move on here. I think I woke my both children up.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna be getting
It's
hollered
my
at.
turn. I haven't paid. Okay,
Which is on the
where are we?
clock.
206.
You know what? I don't think I've been yelled at enough for picks that I've made, so I'm going to make a pick just so you guys will disagree with me. But it is tight end premium, and this is where I have been taking him. You guys have just taken other guys instead, so it looks like this is a little bit higher than normal for me. But I am willing to take Luke Schoonmaker here. I know he's an older prospect, but I love what Dallas does with the tight ends. I really don't think that's going to change just because Kellen Moore's out. I think how they're being used is the same because I think it's just as much on the quarterback as it is the offensive coordinator where that ball's going to go. So I think he's going to be the starter from week 1. He was very good at Michigan. And like, all I want is for him to be Dalton Schultz. That's the ceiling. That's all that I want. And if he does that and I'm getting that in the mid-second, I was more than willing to give a late first for Dalton Schultz 2 years ago. I was more than happy to do that. So if I could get a lesser age, I don't even know if he's that much younger than Dalton Schultz, to be honest with you, because he's so old coming to the league. So I always be like a much younger, but that might not be true. But yeah, give me Luke Schoonmaker here, and I'm really happy with it.
All right, Dan, 207.
I see Shoemaker going in the 3rd round, Mitch. I know
I
you
know.
did take him.
Look, people
take him
make
here
mistakes.
in one of your
I
leagues.
can't help everybody, Dan.
I like him in the 3rd round. It's hashtag too rich for me in the 2nd round because I do think Ferguson and Hendershot are going to have a role, and I think it gets watered down a little bit in Dallas. I think Shoemaker blocks really well, has receiving upside, but I see as a 3-headed monster there in Dallas. We will see. 207.
We're using the phrase 3-headed monster loosely tonight, apparently.
Yes. Monster.
This is getting stressful now because I've only got 2 more picks, and there are guys at multiple positions.
This is the nice thing is there's like a lot of guys I want to pick in this range.
I'm going to see what slides to me in my next one. I'm going to I got Bijan, so I don't need any more running backs. I'm going to keep the receiver train going, and I'm still not going to take Rashid Rice.
Dan's treating this like a 3-team mock.
This is like a team you're building, but you have a lot of draft picks for it.
Gotta keep building. I know. I'm spoiled here. More drafts than I'll ever see. Draft picks than I'll ever see in my lifetime. I'll go with Marvin Mims. I'm gonna pay. Coach Payton loves him. I think Sutton or something's gonna go wrong or someone's gonna leave at some point. I liked him going in. Liked his spot. Give me Marvin Mims with the Denver Broncos at 207.
208, another guy that's in the tier before this. I mean, you're giving me a 3rd-round draft capital running back in Kendre Miller, who actually outperformed his draft capital expectation. I actually thought he was going to slip to the 4th, but he goes to New Orleans. We don't know the Alvin Kamara situation from a legal perspective. How much longer does he have? Yes, Jamal Williams is there, but Kendre Miller, he's a back that while he doesn't really provide all that much in the passing game, again, we see what running backs get moved for in season. I want Kendre Miller here with the potential to pop. So at 208, give me Mr. Miller.
That was my other pick. I was hoping he'd slide. I'm mad at you now.
All right.
Mitch.
Let's keep the running backs going. I'm going to go with Roschon Johnson here. He's one of the few backs that is actually going to walk into a role to where he could end up being the starter by week 2 or week 3. I know Khalil Herbert's pretty good. He's really fast, looked good last year. But Roschon is the kind of back to where you could see him slowly taking over. And by the time fantasy playoffs come around, maybe he is the full-time starter. And if that's the case, even in a Justin Fields-led offense, it's, this late in the 2nd round, I think that's a gamble worth taking because I do think that he's a guy like we brought up with pretty much everyone before this. If he hits, you're at least getting your draft capital back for next year. Worst case scenario, if he's doing what's supposed to, Herbert gets a little nicked up, he only starts for a couple of games, you're going to get a mid-second for him. So you might as well take him at this point.
All right. Dan?
All right. I was hoping, as I said, Miller would go to me. Roschon's in that mix of guys I like.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Khalil Herbert only ran 4.55.
But he looked fast last year, right? Or am I just not remembering right?
That just stood out to me when you said he was really fast.
Yes, maybe he wasn't. In my head, he looked quick last year.
He's quicker than he is fast. He hits the hole good. He's a good running back.
I think I would have beat him if he was in that 40-yard dashing.
Pretty close. You would have.
We know running backs don't need to run 4.4s. You could run 4.55 and be a very good back. So I think Mitch is seeing that explosiveness through the hole.
That's not what I said.
That burst. But you're making him sound so. Mitch had a vision, JB. He had a vision. I'm just saying you're dogging him.
I have lots of visions.
Anyway, don't dog Mitch's vision. Come on.
All right, Mitch. I'm sorry for.
I appreciate that.
All right,
I used
so
to have 2020.
So don't dog my vision. That's got to be another shirt, and then Laporta John's got to be another.
I love Laporta John.
All right, what do we got here at 210?
Yep. There's some run to receivers I see, but I do want to get a running back. You guys are sniping them now. I have 2 running backs I still like. I am going to go with Tajay Spears. Hey, we're talking about Henry leaving. If Henry gets hurt, they still love pounding the ball. I think, Coach always has that team good even when we doubt him. So give me Tajay and the running back potential this late in the second round.
The knee is concerning. Mm-hmm. But again, at this point in the draft, even if he gives you 2 years of production post Henry, that's a win. And the fact that the Titans still were willing to take him in the 3rd round, that was crazy to me, because once those reports came out pre-draft, I was thinking he's going to slip to day 3. Yep. So I was very surprised to see his name get called there.
He had to pass their medicals though. So hopefully they did their do research on that.
Don't dog my vision. Anyway, I am gonna go. Oh man,
I have an idea where I think you're gonna go. We'll see if I'm right.
Like this is the first one I'm torn with, because we're in the tier. We're in my tier still.
We're in the sheets.
We're in the sheets. I don't have a player that I would have taken earlier given the chance. But you know what? Very similar to Zach Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker there. How are they going to utilize both backs? And we saw in Jacksonville, they want to give other running backs an opportunity as well. Okay. He gives you, again, high-end handcuff upside. Give me the tank.
I like that.
Tank Bigsby, the tank, not Tank Dell, Tank Bigsby at 210. As you can see, I'm loading up on running backs here. There were 2 other guys, and I'll call it out after the mock is over if you guys don't pick them, that I had my eyes on. But I'll go Tank Bigsby. All around good running back. Not necessarily explosive, not the most physically gifted guy, not the most athletic, but he and Travis Etienne can provide a nice 1-2 punch. And same thing we talked about with Kenneth Walker, where we don't know these running back situations. They change. They're so fluid. Injuries happen. Tank Bigsby at 210 for me is a no-brainer.
Yeah, that one's interesting to me because
211.
You're good. Yeah. Because the Jaguars have kind of told us this offseason they don't want to give Etienne as much work as they gave him last season. So you wonder if that's going to end up dinging, Etienne's value a little bit moving forward. But I will go, since John drafted Levis.
Do you want Darnell Washington? I know you do.
No, it's Hendon Hooker for me. And so the reason why it's Hendon Hooker for me is if anything happens to Goff, there's certain backup quarterback situations to where you just think the guy is going to be adequate, right? That's just kind of what you're looking for. And those guys usually cost late seconds, early thirds if you're just looking for that little tiny spot start. So if I could get a guy who might have a shot at being a starting quarterback, I don't think he is. I think he's going to be a backup for the foreseeable future in Detroit. But just getting a guy to where if anything happens to Goff, he could step in and start. But if not, maybe he does show something, with the coaches, and he does get that starting spot here in 2 years when Goff's contract's over. Maybe that happens. I don't think it is. But at the 212, you might as well take a shot at that point.
All right, guys. Who do we miss here?
Hyatt, Downs, Tillman.
Rasheed Rice?
Rasheed Rice.
Not on my watch.
See, I actually, so for Rice, I thought he was going to go in the 3rd round. he goes in the second to a very nice landing spot. So not only was he elevated, forget about landing spot, but because he goes from round 3 to round 2, not top 40 draft capital, where there is a clear difference in separation and hit rates between top 40 and everything else there in the second. But now he's tied to Kansas City. He has that. He's going to have that market excitement, if you will. And if he does pop, there's an opportunity to move off of him if you'd like. But he came in as my wide receiver 15 pre-draft, wide receiver 10 post-draft, despite the great landing spot. Luke Musgrave, could you make a case for him at the end of the second?
I actually thought that's who you were going to pick, to be honest, instead of when you went with, I don't remember who your last pick was.
Bigsby?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep.
The only reason for me Musgrave isn't higher, it's because they also added Tucker Kraft
right afterwards.
And I really like Tucker Kraft.
Yeah.
And adding both of those guys, adding Reed, like Dan mentioned, we have Dobbs, we have Watson, we have Jordan Love, who he's going to be back in 2024 with that slight change. The 5th-year option was altered, but that's my issue there. Fallers for me, 2 guys because I had them. I locked and loaded. They're going top 40 in the NFL draft. Jalen Hyatt and Josh Downs.
Yep.
They slipped. 3rd round draft capital, certainly for wide receivers. By no means is it a death sentence, but I would rather take the shot at a lot of those running backs and tight ends in 2 PPR because we see the inflated price that people are willing to pay for them, as opposed to Josh Downs, who steps into Indianapolis. Like talked about that with Richardson and Jalen Hyatt. There's a ceiling. We took him in the 3rd recently.
Yep.
It was like 213 or 214, so 3rd equivalent. But I could not justify. I had Hyatt at 206 pre-draft. He's now 302 for me. I had Downs 201. But again, I can't justify taking him over so many of these guys.
No.
Agreed. A lot of running backs fell too. A lot of guys was hoping to go 3rd, 4th round. They're at 5th, 6th, 7th. Sean Tucker didn't even get drafted.
That's such a crummy situation with the health there, and hopefully everything goes well for him. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh man, my fantasy teams, but just the medicals. It's tough. Anything else, guys? Any late round guys you have an eye on? In the tiers, I went down to 602. In my,
I'm like, good Lord.
So I went down to 602, and then I have 16 guys listed after that as potential free agent ads if you're interested. But again, it's in the Dynasty Theory Patreon. A lot of additional content. We do the weekly episode of the Pivot Point. We have a great partnership with Dynasty-Daddy.com. A lot of portfolio analytics goes into that. A lot of time spent on that. That's a free website. Go check it out. They do a lot of great stuff. But if nothing else on the draft,
final thoughts.
Dan, final thoughts? Episode 201, Mr. Cranky Pants over there. Don't. What was it? Don't
ruin my vision.
Don't.
It's fair.
Just have my boy Mitch's back tonight. That's all. I
was just saying, because listen. I always like to get ahead of things because our patrons especially and our listeners in general, they like to let us know. They like to call us out. I like to get out ahead of it. Hide in plain sight. That's what I do. So he said the guy was very fast. I just wanted to clarify. Mitch, I love you. I love you, buddy. I love you.
Final thoughts. He's still going, Mitch. I think there was an over/under on John's word count tonight. Crushed the over, ladies and gentlemen.
He just broke
a new world record. New Dynasty Theory record here. Episode 201, ladies and gentlemen. JB, new Dynasty Theory record for word count. My only final thoughts, I'm looking forward to the NFL schedule show that'll be coming up in a week or two. That's next. I see Mitch, did a couple of best balls and underdog already. Mm-hmm. So, ready to start drafting.
Mitch, what do you got?
I'm actually going to do a best ball after we sign off. I want to get started on a couple of them before the schedule comes out. But the only thing I'm going to say is just help people out and tag them when they're OTC. For someone like me that's in too many leagues, it's so huge if I'm just not noticing that I'm on the clock when someone's like, hey, Your OTC, just so you know. I'm like, oh, thank you. So we don't have to waste everyone's time. I just think it's, the nice thing to do.
Okay. Well, I don't want to go any further on my word count. So for Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. We hope everybody enjoyed this week's episode. We'll catch all of you next week. And if you're in the Discord, we'll be catching up with you in about 2 minutes here. So hopefully everybody has a fantastic week ahead.